Welcome back to OBS Talk Show Presents. Alabama House Districts 55 and 16 will be having a special election to determine who will represent those areas in the state legislature. This commentary being presented doesn't reflect the views of OBS News, OBS Radio Networks, and the Austerlid broadcast section. While the District 16 race consists of two white Republican candidates, the race has been rather quiet. No public bashing, no slanderous remarks, and no shaming. Both candidates stuck to the issues that people needed to hear. The two candidates are not new to politics, and both of them have a business background. Cox leaned heavily into his experience in agriculture and community services, whereas Bryony Ark, an attorney in Northport, campaigned on his judicial experience in having served as a municipal judge for several communities. However, the District 55 race was ugly from day one. It started with three candidates from Fairfield who were unable to justify the economic turmoil that city leadership could barely contain. Two candidates have years of experience in grassroots organizing and advocacy. The last candidate is a newcomer with no political experience. Next, you have two individuals, Travis Hendricks and Sylvia Swain, who make it to a runoff because no one reaches over 50% of the vote. Hendricks and Swain are from two different worlds. The first candidate mentioned is an African-American police officer in Birmingham. The second candidate is a white female transgender business executive who also lives in Birmingham. This will be the first time a representative from District 55 hasn't resided in Fairfield in nearly 30 years. Finally, the race turned from bad to ugly when supporters of the two candidates began an all-out war against each other on radio and social media. Instead of talking about the issues, it was a classic case of a battle between race, gender, and sexual orientation, things that have nothing to do with the runoff election. The main issue that bothers me in this runoff election is the people who either don't live in District 55 or the city of Birmingham who have the most to say about the election. Many people took to the radio and social media to defend their candidate. Some supported Hendricks because he is African American and that seat must be maintained by a person of color. Some supported Swain because she is an outsider who cannot be controlled by special interests. Many people don't like Swain because she is transgender and believe she will only cater to issues related to the LGBTQ+ community and not the majority of the district, which is African American. Others went too far in making hateful comments to Swain and the people who supported her, like former candidate Cara McClure. No one ever mentioned anything about the issues except the people who supported Swain, who believe this is beyond sexual orientation or gender, but it's time for a new face to address the issues former officer holders refused to address. This race is like an angry mob looking for revenge on a gang who took over their street corner. Recently, a flyer circulated on social media and mailboxes fearing people into voting for Hendricks because Swain is transgender and will not look out for the best interests of the people. A counter-warning was issued citing Hendricks's finances came from questionable sources, including right-wing organizations who stand against the issues Swain believes advocates for. It certainly does not look promising to state environmental and grassroots advocacy groups who see these organizations as a threat to climate change, public safety, and economic opportunity for everyone in Alabama. That's why this race in District 55 is bad, worst, and the ugly. Let's just be clear on one thing, we do not tolerate any form of hate. Whether is verbal, in writing, in text, or in speech, we will stand against any form of hate. We will call people out, by name, those who use hate to bring in the votes to win elections. Stop voting for people just because you know the candidate or the candidate's family. Stop basing your vote on social status, color, race or ethnicity, affiliations or associates, or popularity. Go beyond what the candidate has said or written. Look at the candidate's record of service. Look at who is backing the candidate. You can tell much about a candidate based on who is backing him or her than what the candidate has to say, but you are too lazy to research and ask questions. You would rather vote off of emotions than vote off of intelligence. Some of you do not want to vote at all, but be the greatest complainers. If you are angry about this situation, you should be. The issues are lost in the wind that became a thunderstorm of race, gender, and sexual orientation instead of who is best qualified. For you activists out there, you are too hypocritical and fake to either care about this race or people in general. Resolving to fear rather than intellect and compassion, always looking for something in return instead of making a difference. You make me sick. And to the members of the clergy, the Bible commands us to love our neighbors as ourselves. See to it that no harm comes to them. And to be our brother's keeper. Preachers say that quite often, but practice it very little. Comments coming from ministers and Christians on local radio and social media are enough to beyond the pathetic meter. Welcome to the Hypocrite Club, where you can say one thing, do something else, and get a pat on the back because of your status. God is not pleased with you. Either you receive mercy or be held accountable, or both. That's up to the good Lord above. Finally, when you go to the polls, forget about the fears, the lies, the hypocrisy, and the bashing. Don't let anyone tell you who to vote for. The choice is personally yours. Make that choice independently. Most importantly, vote. That is all for this edition of OBS Talk Show Presents. Be sure to join us next week for another episode. Until then, have a great weekend.